If you've ever talked to a recruiter and walk away thinking, wait, did I just get lowballed? This video is for you. Because here's what nobody tells you as an employed staff nurse. So agencies aren't just a place to find a contract. They're basically a relationship. And if you are building your nursing practice, you need to know how to choose agencies and how to talk to them and what to ask, as you don't leave money or good working condition on the table. So today I'm giving you agencies 101, and I'm going to share with you my experience about this and how I get lobbled before and how I mess up basically. But in this video, I'm gonna share with you, and hopefully you get something out of it. Okay, so I want to talk to you about Agency 101, the very basic, basically, on how to pick up the right agency, how the exact questions to ask about rate, stipend, and accommodation and travel, and the simple negotiation language that keeps you respected without you being awkward, basically. So if we haven't met yet, my name is Miles, and I've worked as a nurse for years and moved into travel nursing and now built my own structure so I could get paid like a nursing practice. And I've learned this the hard way. The nurses who win aren't always the most experienced clinically. They're the ones who basically ask better questions and run a cleaner process. So here's the core idea that I want you to know. Agencies are like your pipeline. So think of agencies as, a source of contract that you can get. An employed staff nurse relies on one employer. A nursing practice builds options. And the biggest mistake I see in nurses treating agencies like a one-time transaction. You know, just get me the contract, just get the contract approved, right? But if you do that, you'll always be reacting. If you treat it like a relationship, you can compare offers, you negotiate cleanly, and protect your schedule, your money, and basically your sanity. So bit number one, how to choose agency. So let's start with selection. Okay. So rule number one, I have a couple of rules that I want to share with you. Rule number one is don't rely on one agency. This is my recommendation. And, I stand by this. Even if you love them, even if they got you your first contract, I recommend having at least two or three agencies that you can work with. Not because you're trying to be shady, but because you're trying to be stable. Rule number two is choose agencies that match your goals. Now, before you even talk about rate, you need to ask, do they place in the province that you want? Do they place in the units that you want? Do they have contracts in the schedule that you want? It could be 8 hours, 10 hours, or 12 hours. It could be you want just all day shift, or could be you want all night shift, or days, nights, nights, or rotation. Do they have a reputation of supporting nurses when things get messy? You need to ask this. Rule number three is you need to pay attention to the recruiter's behavior early on. So, this is a big one. Green flags. Do they answer questions directly when you ask them? Do they put things in writing when they say something? Not just like hearsay, right? Do they, do they rush you, or do they give you more time to think about it? Do they tell you the process clearly? These are the green flags. If they do this kind of stuff, then give them a chance, right? Here's the red flags. Just sign and we'll figure it out later. Hmm. Or they will say, some vague answers about the pay, like, oh, we don't talk about the pay until you on board with us, or until we submit this contract to the facility. Or they use this pressure tactics, or they dodge your questions about cancellations, or it could be overtime or travel reimbursement. If they're slippery before you sign, they won't magically become organized after. Okay. Bit number two is the pay breakdown basically the rate versus stipend versus accommodation. So now let's talk about money, right? Without making it weird, without being making it awkward, when you're looking at an offer, you want to basically understand the full picture. You want to itemize if you want, right? Number one, what's your hourly rate? This is the cleanest number, okay? Ask for maybe a regular hourly rate. What's the overtime rate? Once you go more than 12 hours, is that double or just one and a half? And when can you do overtime? Is it after or more than 40 hours? Then when you take another shift, is that overtime? Or it could be after or more than 80 hours biweekly? That's overtime. Because I worked with one agency before, and the only time you can get overtime is when you work 160 hours per month, not even 80 hours biweekly. You need to work for a full month and reach at least 160 hours before you can get paid overtime. And that's crazy, right? And how about stat holiday rate? Are they gonna pay you with a stat holiday rate? How it's been calculated? Number two, what's the stipend? Some contracts include a stipend to help cover living costs. The important part isn't just do you have one? It's basically what is based on, or is this stipend a taxable or non-taxable? And what condition make it change? These are the things that you need to ask. Number three is the accommodation. Sometimes accommodations are provided, or most of the time, the accommodations are provided. But sometimes, if you don't feel like, going to the accommodation that they offer to you, you can get your own accommodation. You just need to get reimbursement, or you just get a housing allowance. Sometimes it's on you. Sometimes you pay the, what is that, the damage deposit. And then, of course, after your stay in that particular area or particular accommodation, then you can get reimbursed for that damage deposit. So you need to ask those stuff. And sometimes most recruiter that I talk to are pretty good when it comes to making this clear. But you need to clarify, are accommodations provided or is there an allowance? Because you need to know. Because need you don't get you don't need to wait until you get caught off guard, like, oh, I thought you're the one providing the accommodation. And then the agency will tell you, like, no, you should be the one providing your own accommodation. And now you're screwed because your flight is on the next day and you still don't know where to stay, right? And then you ended up in staying in the hotel, which there's no kitchen, there's no utensils and all that stuff. And, you know, you're screwed by essentially, right? So if provided, where is it? What's the distance? Can I just walk or do I need to drive? What's included and what's the standard? So if it's allowance, how much is it? How much per night? So when you take contracts, the rate is basically based on per night, not per month. So for December, there's 31 days in December, bill them 31 days. So whatever the rate is, average is 130. If you go lower than that, then they're trying to lowball you with the accommodation. But if you can get 130 and up to 150 to 160, then you know that you're getting the best rates. And you just need to know if that's taxable or non-taxable. Because sometimes I'll take a higher stipend and with a lower hourly rate. Because I don't care how much I make per hour. What I care is the amount that is non-taxable. And I'll go with that. Right. So you just need to think all of this stuff. And one more thing, nurses forget most of the time the travel reimbursement. So always ask, is travel reimbursed if you are driving from, let's say, from Alberta to British Columbia, or from Ontario to British Columbia, or whichever province that you plan to take your next contract? Ask them, is the travel reimbursed? And how does it work? Do you reimburse per kilometer or per, gas or whatever it is? You just need to ask how much. you know? And when do you get it? Is it right on your first paycheck or at the end of your contract? Because other agency will tell you like, oh, we usually just give it, you know, at the end of your contract. Now you're screwed. But if you don't really care about it, then at least you are aware. And what receipts do you need? Do you need the gas receipts? Do you need the mileage that where you take a snap or take a picture of your odometer, and then before you leave, you take a picture, and then once you arrive to your destination, you take a picture. But most of the time, agencies are just basing it from Google Maps or whatever maps that is available, where they will get your resident, or where you live, and to the accommodation that you're driving to. So that's taken care of basically. Bit number three is what to ask so you don't get lowballed. So here are the exact questions I'd ask every single time. And I kind of like use this as my template and guide whenever I hop on the call with another recruiter. Number one is what the bill rate. So this is the big one basically. So you're not being rude, you're being professional. So here's how you say it. I'm comparing a couple options, which we already talked about in past couple of videos. But if this is the first time you watch my video, then this is basically how I say it and how I ask them. I'm comparing a couple options. What's the bill rate for this contract? And if they won't share it, you can still negotiate. That's why having a community where you can ask before you talk to the recruiter is very crucial so that you know what you're talking about. And if they won't share it, you can always negotiate it, but you are now negotiating with less information, and you're kind of like talking to them blindly. That's the only thing. Number two is, can you send the full pay package breakdown in writing so that you can analyze it, you can compare it, and go from there. You decide if that basically um, follows your guidelines or that works with you, right? And you want the itemized hourly rate, the stipend, the travel reimbursement, the overtime rules, the deductions if there's any. Number three is, what's the cancellation policy? Again, you need to ask, how much notice can the site give? So if the site decide to, like, they don't need you anymore because they just hired a bunch of new grads and they don't want to work with travel nurses, then how much notice can they give you so that you can plan ahead of what to do next? And you also ask, is there a guaranteed minimum? If they cancel your contract, halfway, are you gonna get paid for the rest, or are you gonna get half of it, or what's the deal? And you just need to ask these questions. This is for your own peace, because once you have clarity, you know what to do, you're more confident when you show up, and you don't, you don't screw it up yourself. Okay. Next is, what happens if the shifts are canceled? Are you gonna get paid 4 hours for that shift, or you don't get paid at all? Number four is, what are the expectation on floating? So most of the time when you are traveling, other unit get short staffed. Let's just say there's 14 sick calls. Now you are fully staffed in the unit that you're traveling in. And sometimes they don't have a choice but to ask you to float to that unit. You just need to ask, especially if you are in ER or ICU or med surge, you need to ask, can I be floated? To where? What's the orientation like? Because again, for us travel nurses, we most of the time so far, the longest orientation that I had was 8 hours. That's it. I never had more than 8 hours of orientation. The the least orientation that I have was 2 hours. And then I'm off on the floor, working, have a full load with barely knowing anything, where the supplies are, who to ask, who to call, who, like, all the stuff. These are the questions that you're gonna ask. Okay, what's the orientation looks like? Most of the time, they'll tell you like you'll have 2 days orientation, 1 day and 1 night, and then after that, you will have your full workload. But In reality, nah. That's why I highly recommend to have at least 2 years. That's my ask. 2 years of solid experience. If it's you only have 1 year, then you might struggle for a little while and you probably get a bitter taste of travel nursing because most staff nurses don't like travel nurses. I'll tell you that. And you probably experienced that, right? Number five is what's the schedule and how locked is it? So you gotta ask, is it days? Is this nights or is this a rotation? Are there any weekends? Are there any call requirements? Are you gonna they're gonna put you on call if they need you? How far in advance the schedule is posted? Are you gonna get the full schedule for the entire contract? What's the deal? Right? Number six is what's the fastest way to increase my rate? So sometimes it's so awkward to ask this question firsthand, but you just gotta ask so that you know what to aim for. You know the ladder, you know when to ask to increase your rate. That's why I'll give you a little secret. Whenever I get a new contract, I don't book for more than 3 months, usually within 2 months to 3 months, right? One reason is I want to test the unit this. I want to taste how the staff nurses are. Are they team player? Are they good with travel nurses? What's the system look like? Are they still paper charting or are they all full blown computer charting? I need to test this because I don't want to stress myself. Yeah. So 2 months or 3 months kind of like give them an idea that you're fully committed to work, right? But that's the maximum. The second reason is that if I don't like the unit, then I only need to bear 2 months of contract or work. And after that, boom, I'm gone. I'm not coming back. The second reason is basically once the people that you work with in that unit started to get comfortable with you, started to love you, you started getting their trust, and now they want you to extend your contract. So once that happens, the unit or the facility that you are traveling to will ask your agency, can you get this travel nurse contract extended? Now your recruiter will contact you and say, like, hey, the unit wants you to extend your contract. Can you do that for another 2 months? You got what I'm thinking. Now you gotta ask, is there any increase in my rate? Because technically, they're the one that wants me or needs me. Now I'm a little bit like, are you willing to increase my rate? Because if not, then it's up to you. If you say, okay, that's fine, or you can always find another contract that it pays a little bit better compared to your current contract. This is where magic happens. And I don't know for you, but for me, it feels like a game. It makes me more excited because I can test the water. I can kind of like play with it. I don't know, it makes me feel excited. And this is what fuels my passion, not just for nursing, but at the same time in the business side. So this question is gold because it shifts the conversation from give me more money to tell me the levers, tell me the ladders, tell me the grid on when. Because sometimes it's you just need to prove to that agency or to that recruiter that you can commit this long contract or this couple weeks of contract and you get a bonus after that because not just for a sign-in bonus you also get a what is that contract completion or a assignment completion which is another 500 to $1,500 and that's free money. You work anyways. So why won't you take advantage of it, right? And sometimes it's basically being flexible on start date or you take night shift or you're willing to extend your shift if they're still trying to figure out and still calling out for overtimes for the staff nurses. You are willing to kind of like do an extra mile for them or you're going to a harder field to site site It's just you just need to think the odds on how you can. It's not taking advantage, but you gotta play the game, right? Bit number four is the simple negotiation script. And this is the script that I always rely on. Okay. Let me give you a few lines that you can literally copy. Script number one is the calm comparison. So sometimes I get to, wear this hat because it always depends of who I talk to, what kind of recruiter that I'm talking to. Because a little bit about me, I'm kind of like a mirror. How you act is a complete reflection of how I will present myself. Because sometimes I mimic the way you talk, I mimic the way you negotiate. But sometimes if it's too much and I don't like it, I'll kind of like bring it down and, make sure that we are on the same page. So that's who I am. So script number one is the calm comparison. So what you will say is, I always say this one, like, hey, thank you. And, but can you walk me through the pay package? Like I'm just comparing two other options and I want to make sure that I'm looking at the same breakdown. So in this way, the recruiter that you're talking to is aware that they're not the only one that is trying to win you. So now they're trying their best to make the best offer as they can right off the bat, and hopefully, you know that's it. But if you negotiate this, they still have room for them to increase the rate, or it could be to increase the accommodation or stipend or whatever it is, or whatever bonus that they can give you, right? Script number two is the counter. I call this the counter punch. So what I usually say is like, hey, I'm interested, but at that rate, it doesn't quite make sense for my nursing practice. If we can get to X dollar per hour, or X dollar per weekly, I can probably commit today. And then you stop, you let them talk, and you don't cut them off. You just let them talk until they say like, hey, what do you think about the rate that I offered? And then you think about it. And if it sounds good to you, then you decide. Script number three is the what can we move questions. Okay. So I like this one. So if the hourly rate can't move, what can we adjust? Could be the stipend, it could be the travel reimbursement, could be a completion bonus or schedule. What can we adjust if we can get the same rate that I want? So again, let them talk, let them justify that the rate is this, and then all the stuff, right? Script number four is the boundary. So here's I usually say, I'm not comfortable signing until I have the full breakdown in writing. So I want to include the rate, the stipend, the accommodation, and the cancellation policy. From there, once I receive it, I'll review it and then I'll decide. So you're being direct. And probably I don't know if you are comfortable saying this to a recruiter, especially if this is your first time, but sometimes I'm just be direct as I can be so that we just save each other time and each other's energy. Script number five is the respectful walk away. So if everything is not going the way I want it, this is how I say it. So I appreciate it. I'm going to pass on this one. If something comes up closer to this X dollar with a cleaner package, I'd love to revisit. That's last one is powerful because it keeps the relationship open. You're not burning the bridge. You just keep the relationship open. Bit number five is the mindset shift. So you're not begging, okay? You need to think this that you are not begging. You are building. So here's the mindset shift that changes everything. So when you operate like an employed staff nurse, it can feel like you are asking permission, which that's what we're used to. But when you operate like a nursing practice, especially if you've been in the market for, a couple months maybe or maybe a couple years, then presenting yourself and how you carry yourself becomes a different way on how you do things, right? So when when you operate like in nursing practice, you're doing your diligence. You're basically comparing offers. You're protecting your time. You're protecting your license. That's not being difficult. That's just being professional. And recruiters who work with nurses who has their own practice knows and respect this type of nursing or nurses. And that's just the way it is. But if the recruiter that you're talking to doesn't have any experience to with nurses that has practice, then they could be a little bit more of like they don't understand the whole thing. And it's okay. Just you can always walk away and you can always say, I'll revisit. I'll keep you in mind. Okay? So that's how I do it. So here's a quick recap. So choose 2 to 3 agencies to work with and ask the same offer, the same place, so that you can have different offers basically. Get everything in writing once the recruiter says something and make sure that it's written before you sign and initial your name in that contract. Ask about bill rate, the pay breakdown, the cancellation, the floatings, the schedule, and all that stuff. Always negotiate calmly and professionally. Again, don't get yourself attached to the contract. That's why surgeons are not allowed to operate their family members. Why? Because once the emotion gets in the way, you'll get messed up easily. Okay? So try your best not to attach your emotion to the contract so that you can decide clearly. Okay? If you do those things, you'll avoid most lowball situation. So here's my invite to you, and here's my recommendation. If you want to keep the conversation going, like you want to drop your situation, your province, your pay package, and get real feedback, come hang out with us inside Frontliners Hub. It's basically a community of travel nurses who shares the same passion with own practice and shares our experiences. And you can ask your questions, you can get your questions answered, and we can also guide you on how to navigate things if everything goes south. All right? So comment agencies and tell me what province you're in, and I'll make the next video based on what you're seeing. I hope you learned something in this video, and I can't wait, and I'm so excited to see you in the next one. Ciao for now.